So this presentation is about the EU Guyana FLECT VPA, the Guyana Legality definition, commonly referred to as the GLD. The GLD is one key component of the LES, or the Legality Assurance System, and is built upon the wood trapping system of Guyana. Essentially, it seeks to answer the question, what makes timber legal? Therefore, in an effort to ensure that timber products that are exported are legally obtained, a definition of legally sourced timber with several principles, criteria, indicators, and verifiers was developed. Taking into account Guyana's land allocation system, land tenure, and use rights, the legality indicators varies. As such, the development of the specific matrices within the Guyana legality definition for each type of forest management organization was developed. The forest management operator can be at the level of a company, an individual, a village, or any other similar entity. State forest operations, timber sales agreements, wood cutting leases, state forest authorizations, agricultural leases, mining leases, processing and sales entities, export entities are examples of these. We also have private landowners, Amerindian villages with titled land. The matrices, which are forest management or operator specific, outlines the indicators with which will be verified to determine the legality of forest produce. The Guyana legality definition encompasses verification pertaining to legal rights to harvest, legal harvesting and legal trading, and social and environmental aspects. Now, in the Guyana legality definition, as we said before, there are principles, criteria, indicators, and verifiers. As such, we need to determine what is a principle. In this definition, a principle may be defined as the essential elements to meet international standards for legality definition, something of fundamental importance to the Guyana legality definition. Such an example would be the FMO has in place a valid license to drive a motor car. The criterion for that would be there is a compliance by the FMO with applicable national laws relevant to driving that motor vehicle. So in this case, the criterion would in principle be a condition that has to be met in order to adhere to a principle. And it's an important goal, issue, or desire associated with the fulfillment of a principle. An indicator, on the other hand, is something that is measurable. So, for example, a driver's license is held by the owner or the operator. That person who has to drive the car has a driver's license. So it's measurable, and it states or allows an assessment to whether or not an associated principle has been fulfilled. A verifier, on the other hand, how do you verify that a driver has a driver's license? The actual driver's license will be held in the person's hand. Therefore, a verifier can be defined as information or observation that will be used to demonstrate that the required state is being realized, or that there is something factual there to verify that this is happening in principle. So, the preambles for each matrix has been added to give any reader a clear understanding of what each forest management operator has to do and what they encompass. Additionally, definitions and acronyms for the relevant terms used have also been included for the purposes of clarity. The development of the Guyana legality definition. In addition to all that was just explained, audits has to be done in order to ensure that all these principles, these verifiers, these indicators are in place and they're being adhered to. So audits of the Guyana system under the Norwegian agreement indicated that the local systems for the determination of legality were very robust, and this was done in the past over a number of years. So there's continual audits of the Guyana legality definition. EFI, for example, indicated that the systems in Guyana were very advanced when compared to other countries' system of tracking lumber. And one example of this is compared to, let us say, our neighbor Suriname, who, when compared, shows that Guyana is far ahead. For example, we have already in place our log tracking system. There is no such mechanism in place in Suriname. These audits therefore form the basis of the principles, criteria, and indicators within the legality definition. So they were not plucked out of the air, so to speak, but essentially based on the audits that were done, principles were identified, criteria and indicators and verifiers were developed from the audits. To date, the GFC and the National Technical Working Group has conducted a series of national engagements with key stakeholder groups around the country. The second version of the legality definition was circulated to key stakeholder groups in the forest sector and civil society within both Guyana and internationally, seeking feedback. Essentially, what is being done is sharing of the second draft so that each key stakeholder or stakeholders who play an important role in the timber industry can be exposed to it, become familiar with it, and help to feed into it and give their comments as to what will work best for them. These included loggers, logging associations, Amerindian communities, sawmillers, timber exporters, government agencies, and other stakeholders. This has led to the third draft of the legality definition being finalized. Consultations on the legality definition are ongoing and will continue throughout the negotiation process. Stakeholders have had the opportunity to make inputs into the legality definition via the internet, forest stations, and through many of the consultations that are taking place throughout the country. Most recently, in the third legality definition, there were consultations in March 2015 with the Amerindian NGOs, March 19th of 2015 with government agencies, civil society in March 2015. And there was a lot of feedback coming from reading the third draft of the definition that helped to mold it and finalize it. Some points to note when considering the legality definition. First of all, the legality definition is country specific. It is ours, it is unique. It will be different from any other countries because our stakeholders are unique, our country conditions are unique, our species are unique, and so the requirements of the legality definition will also be unique. It is what the stakeholders will agree to over the duration of the VPA negotiation. The Guyana legality definition is also in draft format and will be finalized at the end of the agreement. Inputs can still be made by many of the stakeholders. The Guyana legality definition is based on what is practical and achievable consistently. It is not a draft or a document that is written by people who sit around the table. It is really done by the stakeholders, you the stakeholders. Consultations on the Guyana legality definition are ongoing, and stakeholders continue to have the opportunity to make inputs into the legality definition via the internet, forest stations, consultations, and even stakeholders can send feedback to the email address euflect@forestry.gov.gy.
The Voluntary Partnership Agreement, or the VPA, is basically a trade agreement between Guyana and the EU. In this case, it is going to be towards the establishment of an EU FLEC license, which basically is the EU's way of dealing with illegal logging and the products of illegal logging coming into the EU. On Guyana's part, what we have to do is establish that we have the legal framework and the facilities to ensure that the logging products that are coming out of Guyana are done through a legal framework that can be relied on by other countries. One of the key aspects of the VPA is going to be the legality definition. This is going to be based and founded on current legislation, which means that there is room for it to be amended in light of changes to the legislation or the enacting of new legislation in Guyana. Well, under the legality definition, some of the more important legislation will be the labor laws, the Occupational Safety and Health Act, the Forestry Act. It's important to note that with the legality definition, it has to be able to reflect the current status of the legislation in the country. It is not just Guyana and the EU who will be depending on it, but it is also people who want to engage in the actual logging and in Guyana that have to be able to look at it and say, well, this is what we need to do. This is what we're allowed to do. And therefore, it has to be based on current legislation and not just on what we would like to put in or what we think should be changed. But those are things that can be done along the way. What is currently there is what is the current legal status in Guyana.